Thank you very much. It's really an honor to be here. And following that act, I don't know that I'll be able to live up to that. I was introduced the other day as Dr. Coleman, and I'm not a doctor, and I'm not an expert, but I do very much appreciate this unprecedented gathering of experts from the science and health realm and people who are on the ground working to make this change happen in communities. It's really been an amazing time to be doing this work, and I think it's incredible the number of countries that have come together today to help advance this movement. And it really is a movement. We live in an amazing time. This is the first time in history, as we've learned here, that a majority of us live in cities. And I think of that picture of us all across the world as kind of both a problem and an opportunity. I think of it in many ways as sort of like the land of the lost. Many of us live apart from cities, apart from the land, because we're so locked into cities. Here we go. I think this is up now. We have a real opportunity to transform the way that we connect with the earth. My own connection to this came rather accidentally when I was confronted with a horrific event that happened next to my home. I think we can start it now. Yeah, okay, good. So this is the image. I had a chance to fly across the Eurasian continent not long ago, and I was looking at all the cities beneath and reading about the news of the violence that was happening in each of these places as we flew overhead, and thinking of how relevant our work is, not just for saving nature, but for really saving civilization in creating a new way that we can live together peaceably on the earth. It is a staggering time, and I think this picture really captures that asset and that challenge. The challenge is perhaps more vividly demonstrated right here in Victoria, where we around the world watched in horror at what happened with the Black Saturday fires, and it is truly an incredible tribute to the people of Victoria and to the men and women of Parks Victoria, what they were able to do, not only in confronting those fires, but in rising out of them, as many of us have seen the rebirth and the regeneration and the lessons learned. And in the middle of all that, to bring together this amazing conference to look at how we can work together on human and environmental health, I think is a tremendous tribute to Parks Victoria, and I think we should give them all a round of applause as a minimum that we can possibly do. For me, the urgency is more personal. This picture was not taken somewhere in the third world. It was taken on a street in the middle of Washington, D.C. And this, for all too many of our children all over the world, is what play is. Playing in the street because the park or nature are, for one reason or another, inaccessible, frightening, or perhaps even deadly. My own work began when a boy was killed next to my home on Martin Luther King's birthday 20 years ago. At the time, we were the murder capital of the United States, which is really quite an achievement, not a good one. And this is the headline that appeared. And I was just looking at this morning and noticed an article about this, and there really wasn't much talk about it because it wasn't news, but there was a homicide detective who was quoted saying, "We might as well surrender, at least that would be taking action." This boy died in the arms of my housemate, an emergency room physician, as she tried to save his life there on that beautiful noon January day. And the police, in response to this, were telling us to go inside, lock our doors, don't talk to strangers, don't go out at night, and whatever we do, don't go in there. Because Meridian Hill, Malcolm X Park, was seen as the center of violence in our community. We didn't know really why it was like that or anything else, but for some reason that was seen as the center of violence. Well, in the wake of this killing, we decided to do something. We couldn't accept the idea of giving up on the outdoors, giving up on each other. And so we heard about a group of African-American grandparents who had started a crime patrol. Not armed, not in any way using force, but simply they're armed with their love of their community, wearing these silly orange hats that had the name of their neighborhood on them, and being required to say hello to everyone they met. So we thought, well, we can get silly orange hats. We'll do that. And so 9 days after Ricky Magnus was killed, we were armed with CB radios from Radio Shack. I don't know if you have Radio Shack, but don't get your CB radios from Radio Shack because we lost the signal the moment we got near the park. So we really had nothing but these ridiculous orange hats. And we walked in preparing to be pounced on. People said we were absolutely nuts to even think of doing this. None of us had ever been in the park at night before. And we held our breaths as we walked in the stairs at the top of that photo, and there was no one in sight. The place was so dangerous that it was safe. There was no one there to mug, so there were no muggers. And amid the broken glass and the graffiti and the broken lights, there was a serenity. We didn't know that this had been a native spiritual ground for millennia, that it had been the place that Thomas Jefferson wanted in an American-centric way to mark the center of the world, the prime meridian for the earth. We didn't know it had been an African-American theological seminary, but there was a power in the place. There was something about it that compelled us to walk deeper into the park. And then as we walked and started to get comfortable, we realized we were not alone. There were two shadowy figures lurking up ahead. And we remembered this rule that now seemed quite stupid, that we had to say hello. Unfortunately, it was dark enough that I, as the leader of this little ragtag band, could not be seen to be as afraid as I was. And we walked up to the first shadowy figure and held out a very tentative hand with one arm, ready to bolt with the other. Hi, we're here with the neighborhood patrol. We're trying to make the neighborhood a little safer. There was a pause, a bemused pause as I think about it now, and the hand extended and said, "I'm Reverend Morris Samuel. Welcome to Meridian Hill." Reverend Samuel had been coming to that park for 36 years. He'd watched the ducks come and try to nest amid the mayhem. He'd stood there the night that Dr. King had been killed, and as he watched the fires of the riots consume parts of our city below. Even then, amid that dark time, the park a place of peace and solace in connection with nature. He was the mayor of the park. It was his parish. The second person had my last name, but nothing in common with me. He'd been homeless, he'd been an addict, a dealer, he'd been locked up. But when Howard Coleman talked about that park, he had tears in his eyes. He said, "This used to be the most beautiful place in the world. Now look at it." And so that simple act of saying hello that day has launched me on a journey these ensuing 20 years to try to do something about reconnecting us with the special places on earth that Native people understand and that people like Reverend Samuel and Howard Coleman understood so well. Meridian Hill was not designed with people in mind. It was a lovely neoclassical park. I mean, there were people who thought it would be good for people, but it seemed quite anachronistic as the park was developed, really kind of removed from relevance to the densest, most diverse part of the city. So as the park moved forward, this is really how it came to look. Undergirding that was a pile of bureaucratic snarls that were standing in the way of people being able to connect with it. Ball playing was illegal, but drug dealing was rampant. If you wanted to have a concert there, you could bring in a symphony, but only 12 of them could sit down. If you wanted to have a picnic, that would be fine, but you'd have to have traditional food prepared in a traditional manner as part of a traditional celebration, and other than that, you couldn't have a picnic. And so the end result of this was that a place that could have been a place for play and for community was anything but. In looking at this, there's a tendency we have in any place that is a problem to look at what's wrong. But instead, we try to look at what's right. And I want to tell a brief story that I think has versions in every culture in the world, and perhaps many of us know it. It's the story of the three wanderers who come to a town looking for food, begging from door to door, every door slammed in their face. And then they have an idea. They go back to the first door, and they say, "We want to invite you to a banquet in the town square this evening. We're going to have stone soup." A banquet in the town square? We haven't even been to the town square in years, and we've never had stone soup. I'd love to come. Well, the wanderers say, "There's just one thing. Our stone soup is better with garlic. Do you have any?" Yes, sure, I'll bring my garlic. Yeah, I've got garlic. They go to the next door. "Have you got any carrots?" and onions, and on down the way, and the very last door they knock on, they say, "Do you have a pot?" And that evening, everyone is gathered. The wanderers are the last to arrive, each carrying a single stone. So this is us. We are coming into communities with the stones. We needn't have piles of money. We have the ability to spark real lasting change in how we connect with the land. And this is the magic of the urban parks movement. It's a magic that rests not only on the physical reclamation and the environmental reclamation, but the reclamation of what I call the invisible landscapes, all the different layers of deep, abiding connection to the land that we have forgotten and that Native people really understand.